Good morning, everyone. I am Phil Murray, Business Support Manager at the Northern Ireland Chamber. You're all very welcome to the second Grow Internationally with Danske Bank event as part of our Learn, Grow, Excel programme. We have a terrific event lined up for you today with the company in focus, Camlin Group. We are delighted to be joined by Peter Cunningham, CEO, and Emily Paul, Strategic Projects Director for Camlin Group. You're both very welcome today. Peter and Emily will be interviewed by Jamie Delargy, and he'll be getting to the bottom of how Camlin Group has grown internationally by remodeling its value proposition to align with customer needs, creating strategic partnerships for international growth, and changing from a transactional focus to a relationship focus with its customers. These are now all relevant aspects for businesses to consider when growing their business internationally, and hopefully there will be useful insights that you can apply to your own business. I would like to thank the support of our partner Danske Bank, our partner in Grow Internationally, which enables NI Chamber to facilitate events like this. Events that give you the opportunity to access leading business people, listen to how they have grown their businesses in international markets, and obtain advice in all aspects of commercial development through export. I would like to welcome Richard Robinson, Corporate Banking Manager for the manufacturing sector at Danske Bank, and we will have the opportunity to hear from Richard shortly. I would like to thank the support of our SME partner, PowerNI, who is represented today by Neil McConkey, Key Account Manager. Neil, you are very welcome. And a thank you to Jamie Delargy, who will be interviewing Peter and Emily today. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to note two things. One, please submit any questions that you have for Peter and Emily using the Q&A function on Zoom throughout the event. And two, please complete the feedback survey on Zoom as you log off. Feedback is important to us as it drives the direction of our content and speakers for these events. I hope that you find this event useful to your business. I will now hand over to Richard to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. We're delighted to be back here today again for the second in the Grow Internationally with Danske Bank series. The previous event with Danske Group gave us some fascinating insights into how they grew their business internationally through a strong global brand campaign and the successful employment of leading brand ambassadors and influencers. Camlin Group have an equally fascinating story. A highly innovative company investing heavily into a diverse range of R&D projects annually, their global reach now extends across facilities in 17 different countries. We're delighted to say that we've had a long and successful relationship with Camlin Group spanning a quarter of a century and look forward to supporting them over the next quarter of a century. It's important to us as a local bank that we can provide access to the great success stories such as Danske Group and Camlin Group, for local businesses to hear firsthand the challenges and opportunities that international expansion can bring. As a local bank, we are determined to do all that we can to support a return to economic growth, job creation and prosperity as we endeavour to help Northern Ireland grow again. I hope you find today's session insightful and that it provides you with tangible takeaways for your own businesses. I will now hand it over to Jamie to get the event started.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Phil. I would like to welcome our two guest speakers from the Camlin Group, Chief Executive Officer Peter Cunningham and Emily Paul, Strategic Projects Director. Before taking on his current role, Peter was Managing Director of the UK arm of Camlin's energy business, Kelvitec, subsequently becoming Managing Director of Camlin. Now, as CEO, Peter is responsible for setting and delivering upon the strategic vision and direction of Camlin globally and its business units across the energy and rail market sectors. After qualifying with the Chartered Institute of Marketing, Emily proceeded to gain most of her working experience in business strategy and international marketing. Her impressive career has included over 13 years with the Sony Corporation. 2 years ago, Emily joined Camlin and is responsible for the management of strategic projects across the organisation and the rollout of the Camlin rebrand globally. Please submit any questions that you may have for Peter or Emily through the Q&A function on Zoom throughout the interview. We'll be picking them up at the Q&A later on. Now, before we start the interview, here's a short video to give you a flavour of what Camlin Group are all about.
In a world that's changing, we rely on critical infrastructures and networks that keep us powered up and on the move. At Camlin, we're building intelligence and resilience into tomorrow's energy and rail networks. We're helping electricity providers keep power flowing to homes and businesses. The data and insights we share with energy operators help them act safely and decisively to ensure supply continuity. We're helping rail networks keep more trains out on the track, spotting telltale defects before they disrupt services or compromise passenger safety. At Camlin, we've been engineering smart answers to really tough problems for more than 20 years. Now, we're harnessing world-leading skills in data and prediction to help networks run more smoothly, safely, and sustainably. It's our unique insights and expertise that we bring to today's networks and assets to engineer better futures.
Well, welcome, Peter, and welcome, Emily. Now, I was going to start with you, Peter, and well, of course, the focus for today is how Camlin have undergone incredible change for the benefit of its business. But this isn't the only change the company has seen in its history. Could you give me a brief background of the origins of Camlin?
Camlin really is the derivation previously to Camlin. We had a business beforehand called Camlin, which we sold to GE. And then after I did some time with GE, my father created Kelvotech, which was the part of the business, and the low voltage and railway parts that GE didn't take with it. And then we basically took that part of the UK business and evolved that into Camlin, and essentially Camlin became involved in the energy, the asset monitoring, the low voltage and the railway sectors. So for us, really, Jamie, the origin of Camlin, I suppose really Camlin is at the very center of our business is innovation. And it's, it mixed with the technical curiosity that's always been there. So I think, Camlin's a business that's centered in Northern Ireland. We export around the globe. But really, we've always been about technical disruption, and I suppose that's really what we're all about.
We're going to explore some of those issues that you've just raised during the course of the interview, but you mentioned innovation, and of course in 2019, Emily, there was a decision to initiate significant change within the group. What was the catalyst for this?
Yes, well I think, putting it into context, it was at the time that Peter was transitioning into the CEO role at the Camlin Group level, and Peter brought in a number of people with different experiences and different, from different industry sectors as well. And it was a time where we wanted to take a lot of the history and everything that Camlin had been built on and all the good DNA that Peter's just referred to there, but also take a bit of time to review and think about where we were going next. So one of the big things I think at the time we decided to do was a strategic review, which included a stakeholder perception audit. And that was listening to staff. Our people know a lot, they're very experienced, and we tried to listen to people, obviously not everybody, but take a cross-section across the globe, the different offices, as well as the different functions, and listen to their opinions. But also we went outside as well. So we did an external audit, really looking at people's perceptions from suppliers, current customers, prospects, regulatory bodies, political, media, really tried to get a grip of how do people perceive Camlin and what did they feel the strengths and opportunities might be for us. And from that, it was very eye-opening and it helped us set the direction for where we wanted to go. It had become quite clear, I think, that the company had grown a lot over a short period of time, both organically and through acquisition as well. And, perhaps had diversified quite significantly. And there was a time now to really focus on what we wanted to do and set the direction, much more clearly.
Well, Peter, identifying the changes that need to be made within a business is one thing, but then taking action and implementing new ways of working to create that change is another thing. So how important was it to get the right people into the right positions and develop your staff to support this change?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Jamie. we're very fortunate with lots of tremendous people across Camlin, and a lot of really technical people as well, with abilities in AI, machine learning, software, and so forth. But really, what we realised was that at this point, I suppose our customers were changing, and they needed us to change as well, and we needed to bring in a new layer of, I suppose, expertise from outside the organisation, and that really helped us, I suppose, mature, in the eyes of our customers as well.
Now, Emily, you've touched on this issue of what the customers were telling you about the changes that they perhaps wanted to see, but can you develop for me your response to what the customers were telling you, and how you actually took that feedback back on board?
Yes, I think one of the big things that came out, which surprised us, was that a lot of our customers, even the ones that had known us for quite a long time, actually couldn't really articulate who we were and exactly what we did, and certainly the breadth and depth of the offer. So that was, significant finding for us. I think some customers also sort of mentioned that they felt the relationship had been reasonably transactional as well. Mm-hmm. And we really took that on board in terms of, that was part of our direction, that we wanted to become much more strategic, work in partnership with the customers, understand their future problems so that we could help. So taking all of that on board, there's a lot of sort of practical things we needed to do. So things like online customer portals, customer service, measuring customer satisfaction, mapping customer journeys, really understanding them and how we might optimize it and make it easier for customers in the future. But also all of that then informed the new brand identity as well, and where we wanted to go with positioning ourselves in the market.
Well, Peter, one of the things that you did to enhance your value proposition was to include more of a service offering. Now, what was the driver behind this inclusion? Was it an internal push or an external pull?
Yeah, that was really important, Jamie, for us, because historically we were, I mentioned at the start, we're very, by our nature, very innovative and technically curious as a business, and have created a lot of products that are disruptive. But what we recognized was that as our customers were changing in terms of the world around us with net zero and the Build Back Better, etc., and the green agenda, in order for what they were really looking for were more serious long-term partners. And it was we were a business that typically transacted. We sold to them, but we typically sold and then walked away. And what we really wanted to do was really get in behind the metrics, behind the numbers, to understand what was really important to I suppose what the CFO would talk to the CEO about. And when we really understood that, we started then to understand properly what mattered to them. And when we were able to play into that, they started to see us differently. So we doubled down in areas like AI and machine learning and the data side. So we weren't just taking the data from our boxes and our offerings, but other people's, and sort of putting it together. But ultimately, we were able then to say, stand in front of the senior people within our customers who became partners, saying, we can make you better. We can get you to raise your standard by doing, turning certain dials. I suppose, it meant that we were on the same page really, and that was a big transition for us. So that really led, as Emily's mentioned, the focus and I suppose the rebranding. What this is really about is about us divesting of things that I suppose didn't lend itself to that absolute clarity of the way forward. But now that we have that, we can double down in that area. It's good for our customers. They see it, so they're reciprocating. That I suppose the digitization of the services we're offering, is really helping them provide more value to their customers.
Was the realization a light bulb moment, or was it something that became obvious to you over time?
I wouldn't say it was quite the eureka moment. It became evident that we had a great set of skills around the organization, and really what this opportunity is about, I suppose, by unlocking our full potential, we began to see the impact we could really have with our customers. We tested, we brought out the Sapient service, which was a service on the LV side. And when we started to add extra layers of data and extra layers of, extra offerings, the impact it was having was quite dramatic. So we realized, hang on, this is something we really, we need to pay more attention to. So it wasn't quite a light bulb moment, but it was a moment when we recognized this is something we've got to take very seriously. And Emily really helped us, and the other parts of the members of the senior team, I suppose we helped us make the choices in that direction.
Well, the whole part of the process involved a rebranding, and that, of course, has afforded Camlin the opportunity to get its messaging right for a global market. Now, how important is this to communicate to current and existing customers? I think it's pretty important.
Yes, yeah, no, it's a good question, and I suppose the branding is important, but actually the kind of authentic change that we went through was probably more important. The branding sort of obviously comes afterwards and just sort of embodies the change. And I think we recognise, don't we, that we're on quite a journey. We've probably been on a journey for about 18 months, but keep on going, sort of thing, because it's not something that just finishes when you rebrand, for example. We really didn't want it to be seen as a logo on a box here or on a screen or something like that, and people just go, well, you've just changed your name, or you just changed the the colour here. Who cares, really? So to go back to your question about current customers, actually that was really important because current customers obviously knew us. They kind of knew what we stood for, but we were coming out with a different message. And I think particularly that was the case for Calvatech, because we really needed to think about how we were going to manage that Calvatech name and how it operated, because it had always been a sort of product portfolio. It was our load and fault management brand, if you like. And what we were, I suppose if we had a blank sheet of paper and we started without talking to anyone and doing any of that perception work, you would go, okay, Camlin master brand doing the corporate stuff, Camlin Energy with the energy business, and Camlin Rail with rail. Where does Calvatech fit? When we spoke to the current customers, they had a great affiliation with Calvatech. The name, the history that Peter's just talked about, that was very important. And we had long-term relationships with a lot of those customers. So it was important to keep that brand equity. So what we did was make that a geographical brand name, covering the whole portfolio that Camlin Energy has internationally, but geographically it's known as Calvatech in the UK. So one of the things we did with the branding was keep the colours very aligned with Camlin Energy. The fonts, everything really looks the same other than the trading name. And it's now very clearly an endorsed brand. So we make it hopefully very clear to customers that it's part of the Camlin Group, and we explain why that's important to them.
I think one thing as well, just to add to what Emily said, one of the comforting things actually was, Jamie, was our customers felt very, they really were protective over the brands that we had, which was great. And certainly, it's been it was obviously very important to me as well, but it was really encouraging to hear how important it was to them. But I think one thing that what they were delighted to hear, it was a little bit like we had historically, got a lot of potential. We were like teenagers with a lot of potential, but we were recognizing, it was quite, Emily mentioned the perception audit we carried out, and it's quite a painful process when you have to listen to, people that actually you really probe, using independent people, probing to find out what do people really think about you. And sometimes you get answers that you don't really want to hear, but it's quite. But whenever that was the case, we actually, when we analysed it, what they really said to us was, you guys are great. We love you. You're technically great. You're the white guy, the guys in white coats come up with all sorts of interesting things, but we kind of keep you in a sandbox just so that you might interested to hear what you might come up with. But the big, interesting, serious problems are on a different pitch, and we, with the perception audit and the way we were, and with our new offerings, we were transitioning from the sandbox onto this bigger pitch, and now becoming a much more significant player and partner with them. And that's really what this is about. And it's nice to see that, I suppose, they have welcomed the change.
Well, that's you're dealing with a hugely complex issue. You've a legacy, and you want to move into different areas, as it were, or and what do you do with the brand that's associated with that legacy business? And you, in dealing with Kelvatech and how you're managing that, do you believe that in the future you will want to simplify the message further and you simply become known as Camlin Rail, Camlin Energy, or is Kelvatech always going to be there?
It's hard to say in terms of, but Kelvatech is certainly a very, very important part of the Camlin Group. And the business in the UK, our UK DNO customers, and NIE as well, and ESB are the foundation on which the business was built, really. And then, and they'll always be, hopefully, long-term partners for us. So, anything that we do, I know I'm not answering your question directly, but what I'm saying is that area of our business is extremely important. They're going through big changes themselves. And we see ourselves now with our new focus, our new purpose, vision and values, I suppose better aligned to help them for the long term. Jamie?
Okay. Let's talk globally now, because I suppose we're mostly focusing in this recent discussion here about the UK to a great extent. But so you're exporting across the world. Can you give me an indication of the countries you currently sell your product and services to?
We sell all over the world, actually, and I suppose it's probably testament to the amount of grey hair I have living on airplanes and through airports and stuff. But we sell in predominantly outside of Northern Ireland. In the UK is a big market, both in the rail and energy sectors. But then in North America, we have a big market for us. Western Europe and China, those would be three of our what we'd call tier 1 markets. And then we'd have other markets across the globe, such as Latin America, Middle East, Southeast Asia, where we would be, growing substantially. But I think we use a mixture of direct and indirect channels, and really that's the case of the size of the market, the opportunity, ease of route to market, the amount of regulation, things like that.
But the regulations, is particularly now we're thinking of maybe countries with different electricity regulations. I mean, does that pose, in some cases, a barrier you can't get across, or is it just a matter of adapting to whatever conditions you find yourself in?
That's actually a very poignant question, actually, Jim, and something that is very relevant, because in the UK is the most regulated energy market in the world. But when you go to other markets, it depends. Even in North America, it depends on what sector you're in. But what the regulation does is defines the value proposition, the metrics behind the numbers. It allows you to understand how do you make a difference. But I think the regulation is one element of it. As long as you can understand what those companies, what they are playing for, what matters to them, and regulation is one thing that you can use. But it depends how that company's structured, what they're actually, what are the key things. Like I said, what does the CEO talk to the CFO about? If we can understand those metrics in whatever country, that means we can start to play into those businesses in a different way.
Well, no discussion these days in business can avoid the issue of decarbonisation. So, Emily, what is Camlin's approach to decarbonisation? Have you set targets for the company, or what are they?
Yes, I mean, I think that there's probably two parts to that question. The first one is, what are we doing as a company? And one of the big things we felt as a player in the energy industry was that we needed to get our own house in order around sustainability and carbon emissions. So we needed to understand where we were now. So there was quite a lot of work in terms of baseline metrics, measurement, so that we then could set appropriate targets and work towards them. So we're working with an external consultant that we got to come in and really set those targets and help us to measure across the business, because we also need to do it in every single office, every single manufacturing plant, every single R&D and technical centre we have globally as well. So not an insignificant task, but one that we feel is very important for us to undertake. But perhaps, the biggest impact we can have, not just in our own manufacturing or operations, is what we can do with our customers and for our customers to help the wider decarbonisation of the whole network, because that's when we're starting to get into sort of optimising the network. Some of the technologies Peter referred to before, with using AI to help predict faults before they're going to happen, to allow more renewables onto the network, for example. So lots that Camlin can do in that area. So I think we can have a much more positive impact there as well in the whole wider scheme of decarbonisation. And actually, one of the things that we announced really quite recently was the whole investment we're going to make into all of this. So the Camlin Group itself, Peter announced 40 million in R&D innovation across the group, and over the next
50 million.
Sorry, 50 million over the next 4 years.
Only another
It's
10
just gone
million.
up. But I think we're saying sort of 10 specifically into this area for the UK. So for the Kelvatech business particularly.
Yeah.
Before the ED2 regulatory period in 2023. So big investment, big emphasis on R&D in this area, because I think it's a huge issue. Customers are struggling with it. There's a lot of complexity there, but I think one that we can really help with.
Do you want to say something about the challenge of decarbonisation, not just for Camlin,
Yeah,
but for...
I think this is a really, really important topic for us as a business, for our partners, but also for the world around us. And it's probably even right at the centre of why we're changing, why the rebrand and everything else. The partners that we're working with, the customers, they're changing. The energy complexity, the energy story is changing. Some of the companies themselves, we all are now debating about EVs and heat pumps and so forth. And historically, they were marginal. They were on the network, but they were small parts of the network. Now, the requirements on these networks, and I'm talking mostly about energy. There are on the railway networks in a second, but the flexibility requirements, the visibility that's required, it's staggering the amount of data that's required in order, I suppose, to defer huge amounts of asset investment. And that's really where we play into this. We're helping our partners adapt to these changes. So we're not just trying to transact to them, but we're providing huge amounts of data and insightful information to allow them to pivot as well as they make. Because this decarbonisation problem, everybody in this value chain and supply chain recognises that this is a problem we all have to tackle. And as a business, we are, standing up and saying we have our own sustainability plan now. Our supply chain behind us, we're putting measures in place, but also our partners, working with them. Because the truth is, Jamie, the senior people in our, in our network, this is a conversation that's being had now on a regular basis. It also means that the capital side is starting to be, the money flows, not just the politics, but the money flows are starting to meet together. And that's where really I think this is becoming a very important issue for us all. And in the railway side, it's about making the networks more reliable, more efficient, predicting failures, so things can run more efficiently with less energy usage.
Now, this is a tricky question maybe for you, but do you detect a difference in approach to decarbonisation and greening the economy here and in other parts of the world? Are we laggards, or are we on a par with other places?
That's a politically sensitive question. And when you say here, is it Northern Ireland or is it in the...
Northern Ireland.
I think Northern Ireland, at the end, I have a few things I'd like to say about Northern Ireland. I think Northern Ireland has its challenges. We've been in business here for a long time, and it's a great place to do business in many ways, but to export around the globe, it's challenging. And what you get to see when you're in different parts of the world is, even in China, I've spent a lot of time in China, 35 plus times in China and so forth. You see when they make a decision, and it's done, and things move at great speed. North America, the same. I think in Northern Ireland, people are slow to wake up to the seriousness of this. It's like it's a problem it's later on down the road. I think what people are starting to realise is perhaps this wave is coming sooner than they'd anticipated. But there's a lot of bureaucracy here that I think we need to address. You know, there is a points I'd like to make about Northern Ireland.
Well,
maybe you could,
I do absolutely want to afford you the opportunity to talk about our strengths, and no doubt that it is great strengths in our people, in our education process. So how important is it for you that Camlin's based in Northern Ireland?
It's something for me personally, and my family, and my father, and my brother Michael, and the rest of the senior leadership team. It's very important for us because, first of all, it's our home, and we've all lived through the dark days of the last few years. I think from a personal point of view, what we're faced with here is businesses that export. Businesses should be protected and encouraged, because bringing revenue into Northern Ireland from outside is very important. It means that we're not dependent on other sources continuously. But what I would say about Northern Ireland is, for our customers, there's an opportunity for us to perhaps put low-cost manufacturing centres in other parts of the globe. But actually, for our partners, it's very important that they see that we have UK, certainly in our UK partners, they like the fact that we're manufacturing in the UK. They like the fact that it's good for quality, it's good for the people, it's good for continuity of supply. I think being based here is very important, Jamie, but also the other thing is the quality of the people that we get. We have an amazing, I'm sorry, I tend to go on a bit about this, but this is something I feel very passionate about. We have an amazingly talented young workforce here. We have a very highly educated group of young people. School systems here they have their challenges, but the people are well educated. But because we're from Northern Ireland, we tend to have this lack of confidence, to go and export and sell and so forth. But actually, when you present and put people from here in China, in America, in the Middle East, Latin America, they're tremendous. They're made for business. They're resilient. They have a good sense of fun. They're creative, and they've got a sense of togetherness and what's important, and a sense of perspective. So we're made to export from this country. We really are. We just somehow have got it into ourselves. We're not really taught to look up. So for me as a business and sort of as a CEO, I suppose, building on the legacy of what was created before, I'm very proud, extremely proud to be from Northern Ireland. It's I really am. I know we have our issues here and that sort of thing, but it's a great place to live. It's a great place to work. It's a great place to travel from. I think once we have that togetherness and we have this realization of what we can do here, it's really encouraging. So it is very important overall.
Emily, can I bring you in here on that and sort of offer us an assessment of what our image is? If you're saying you're from a company in Northern Ireland and now you're trying to reach out to some country across the world, insofar as they're aware of Northern Ireland, do you think we have a good image, or do you think that perhaps our history is somehow militates against us?
I don't think in business it particularly does. I think it actually is saying, but particularly Ireland is really well thought of for our North American customers. So they love the whole Irish connection and they like to hear about it, and there's a lot of trust between those two regions. So actually that can really play to the strengths. I think mainly when we're exporting, location isn't so important. I think we're generally positioned very broadly in the UK sphere. So it tends not to be, we don't tend to talk about Northern Ireland per se in that regard. But just talking about, the sustainability part of Northern Ireland, I do think there feels like there's a tipping point, particularly because of all the talk politically around, Build Back Better, the green recovery out of the pandemic. Even the fact that COP26 is going to be held, in Glasgow as well. So I think the UK, it's, in the broader sense, is really waking up to all of this and seeing it as incredibly important now.
Well, look into the future. Peter, what are your hopes and expectations for Camlin?
Jimmy, I think, we've obviously been on quite a significant growth path over the last few years, and I say we're very fortunate to work in the energy and rail sectors, which are sectors which are, we really enjoy. It's what we do, but we think are very important sectors for the future. It's very important for decarbonisation, as we've discussed. But the future of Camlin really is about us, with our new purpose and vision, really, I suppose, clarity of the way forward now. We see ourselves as having a much bigger role to play with, in partnership with these major players, helping them, make their businesses better for the future. Not just transacting to them, not just trying to make better boxes, but I suppose understanding in a deeper way what really matters to them. And the one thing I would say, actually, Emily used a word there, which is, I think, fundamental to Camlin, but I also think is very good for people from Northern Ireland, the word trust. And that word trust is actually what this new rebrand and everything is all about. It's about, I suppose, we're giving our customers and partners the opportunity to really trust us, because they understand that we know now where we're going in with complete clarity. And we're now, with the 50 million pounds of investment we're committing now in R&D over the next few years, we're really doubling down in this area to make them better. But the other side of it is, in Northern Ireland, you mentioned, we probably talked about this quite a bit, but people in Northern Ireland and people from this part of the world, we kind of deliver on things. We're used to delivering. We people around the world, we're made for exporting because people naturally trust us. And I think that's something we shouldn't really underplay. It's very important. That's a very important part of why I think we can be we in Camlin and companies from Northern Ireland can be successful.
I don't want to put you in the spot, but can you talk about expansion? Any numbers there you might have in your head that you want to share with us? Don't feel you're under any pressure here.
Well, last year we've we're about to announce numbers. We'll have show growth rates of over 20% in revenue and over 50% in EBITDA from in 2020. I think in 21 we're looking to do something similar again. So we're looking to go over the 50 million again. Certainly somewhere between 46 and 50 million, depending on some of the orders. And EBITDA again growing at about 50%. But what's really important here is that we're growing our backlog and our recurring backlog to give us sustainable growth and sustainable revenues for the future. So we see Camlin growing sort of revenue and EBITDA in a region of 15 to 20% over the next few years, but really with recurring revenue platforms. That's good for our customers, good for our stakeholders. It's good for the people around us, good for our supply chains. So that's really, I don't want to pin myself too closely to the numbers, Jamie, but given that the banker here, but it's also, we do see exciting things ahead for us, really.
Excellent. I want to talk about advice, because an essential part of this whole process is the advice that you can, from your position of strength, give to companies who are maybe a little bit more nervous about change. And Emily, could I start with you? I mean, if you were talking to SMEs and they're contemplating change, what would you say to them? And maybe after Peter would come in and that bit, but what would you say to them?
Yeah, I think the first part is around understanding. So change for the sake of it. The change that we went through was based on a level of we did a lot of research. We really thought about it before we initiated anything. I think it was really important to talk to our internal audiences first. Our staff, our people, are probably the most important stakeholder there, and making sure that they understood why we were changing and why that was important. So, you can't really initiate any kind of change program without people really buying into it. It's not going to work. So you have to explain the why as well as the what to roll it out effectively. So I think that was a really key point in making the change happen, really.
What would your top tips be then, Peter?
I think, you know, I agree with everything Emily said, and that again, the process we went through was extremely painful, Jamie. It was you know, to hear the things that, to take advice from people internally and externally. But what I would say is, fundamentally, it's about getting good people. Really, you know, get good people and look after them, and you know, make sure that you really try and get that discretionary effort out of people, because people are, once they're motivated, once they're aligned, and once they have a direction, they have a clear direction, you know, of the way forward. That's really that discretionary effort is easy to find. I think the ambiguity and sometimes the command and control type of management and leadership where you dictate can sometimes often lead you into choppy waters. Whereas I think that continuously looking and saying, well, actually, maybe, you know, it's time. Is this the right area for us? And perhaps we should, you know, look somewhere else. So I think it's the people. And the other side I would say is young people, and I mean that as in a, you know, sometimes organisations, we're always going after the best CV, and you know, certainly in a technical organisation like ours, where we've got centres right across the globe in Italy and Poland and so forth, and here in Northern Ireland, it is very important to have those high calibre people. But the other side of it is, it's amazing what you can get out of, you know, what young, good, talented, ambitious, and creative young people can give you. That, you know, I think that's something we're really seeing, is that energy coming into the business has been really enlightening. Really, it's been really refreshing.
And just to add to that about change, we're continually changing. You know, I don't think we see the stop point happening at any point. You know, it's really a journey, and we've talked to everyone about, we're on this journey that, you know, we know where we want to head to. We've got a very clear purpose now, which is, you know, well articulated, and everyone understands it. We've got a clear vision. We've underpinned that with a set of values that you know, we try to embed throughout the whole way we do things. But I think that, talking about advice, I think it's a lot of patience as well. You know, that change doesn't happen overnight, and it's going to be something that is just, you know, you have to keep at as well. So a bit of patience as well.
Picking up on this issue of people and how you know, keep them on board and whatever, what practical steps do you take to, if you like, educate people about the change and indeed and attract their loyalty? I mean, what practical steps does the organisation do in those two regards, those two related regards? Yeah,
well, I think people have to believe in you, your vision, what you're trying to.
How do you communicate it? Do you have a newsletter? Do you have you know, do you give talks?
It's lots of different things, isn't it? So, and I think that's been particularly difficult because of the pandemic, and a lot of our staff have been working remotely. So whereas previously you might have had events and get-togethers and breakfast meetings and lots of sort of community-style events, we've had to do a lot of the change programme remotely via Microsoft Teams and presentations, and you know, that has added an extra layer perhaps of complexity to it. But no, I think the purpose, vision, values, the strategic way that we've gone about it to explain the change, but also bringing people along and making sure we're doing, you know, so we have, even if they're virtual, we're doing virtual workshops to talk about the vision. What does it mean for you? What does it mean for the company? What does it mean for your team? What does it mean for you day to day? And as I mentioned, the values, I think, have really helped us.
I think just to echo what Emily's saying, you know, the values, having people in your organisation with sort of aligned values is really fundamental. That's sort of like the foundation of everything, Jamie. You know, it really is, and you want people that are sort of quite like-minded. But the other side, you know, and Emily's mentioned communications. Like we've found now, and with COVID, you know, it's been amplified, that sometimes when you have people all working together, you know, that you assume that people understand the direction of the company, things that are important, but people are busy doing their job. People are busy doing their day job and assume that somebody else has, you know, has got, you know, is taking care of another part of the problem. So we've really found that by communicating regularly, you know, and I suppose concisely, about, and also some of the things that have gone, make sure you communicate the things that have gone well, but some of the things and being open about the things that you haven't done well. Being sort of on this continuous improvement journey. It can't be all cream. There are things, like as a CEO, we make mistakes and say, listen, we tried this, didn't work, but we're gonna, you have to be seen to be learning from your mistakes. And then we've also recently included a sharing success program for some of the people across the business, whereby they can get involved in the future success of the business, so that there's a mutually agreed target, and then there's a reward for them. So people get, aligned, what they see, they're aligned to the direction of the business, but also what's in it for them as well.
Okay, before we go to the questions from the viewers and listeners, I just wanted, because it's COVID and you sort of think everybody is now thinking about, as we transition out of COVID, hopefully we're not going to have another lockdown. Yeah. What about working from home? Is that going to be a part of Camlin in the future for some staff, even for a part of the week? Who wants to take that?
Well, I'll take the first bit of that, and then maybe I know we have a pretty aligned view on this, actually, because we talk about this, Emily and I, and Denise, who's our Chief People Officer, and the rest of the senior team. I think what we've found, Jamie, is that the days of working 9 to 5 in the past in the office are probably over, really. The flexibility and the amount of discretionary effort that our team has put in over the last year has been remarkable. I really thank them, completely about the extra effort the guys have put in. But I think that a hybrid stroke smart working scenario is what people are looking for, flexibility. And that again comes down to trust. That is about us trusting, I suppose, me and the senior team trusting the staff, and that reciprocal relationship whereby we're results oriented, results focused. What I would say though is, I'd caveat it by saying, the creative side of sessions, sometimes it's difficult to do it remotely. And that's, the old whiteboard sessions. So there is that element where, we do need to make sure we hold on to that a bit. So there will be a bit of the requirement to have people in the office for those sessions.
Emily, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and something that we've been asking our staff about. So we've done staff surveys, obviously, because everyone's job's different. So some people rely a lot more on that team working and other people, or they really need to be in the office for the type of work that they're doing, and other people not so much. So I don't think it's ever going to be a one-size-fits-all strategy. I think we're looking at sort of, buzzword of the moment is this polyworking. I think there's going to be a number of different scenarios, and it's going to be much more flexible. But as Peter, talked about, we hope it's going to be a smarter working policy. So it's something that we're looking at significantly at the moment, hopefully starting to bring people back in a safe way as well, for those creative sessions that you talked about.
Okay, now we go to questions from the audience. And by the way, keep sending those questions in. We've got one here from Andrew Wallace from Boomer Industries, and he's wondering about how Camlin identified the additional roles of the external people that were brought into the company, and how did you go about recruiting them?
Andrew, I used to play hockey against Andrew.
Was he any good?
He was good, yeah, he was very good, probably better than me. No, it's a good question. So really, how did we identify the key roles, and how did we bring them in?
Yes.
I think it wasn't easy, actually, if I be honest with you, because even, people like Emily and people like Denise, people with, what we were looking for were people that had international, global experience, and that it's difficult to find that experience in Northern Ireland. So you do have to cast your net wider. So we did use a mixture of different recruitment agencies. We used our network. There's a lot of the traditional way of if you're just looking for people that have Northern Irish experience, it's quite straightforward. But when you're looking for that global experience, you really need to be creative. And I would say agencies, a variety of different, LinkedIn Recruiter, agencies across the water and so forth, and working with agencies here. But I would stand over the fact that the extra level of effort and the extra level of investment required to get that person is 1,000 times more important than, it's more valuable than once you have that person in place. It's the extra money you've spent and the effort you've spent is irrelevant, because the impact they have in your organisation is terrific.
Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that diversity of background is really important. So whether it be industry background, Gordon, I'm thinking in terms of, it came from software background, so that was really important, and that's brought a lot. And I think, I think it's about that sort of diversity of skills. So they don't always have to be working directly in a competitor or within your sphere as such, because there are a lot of transferable skills that can be brought in. And then I think because we've now built a leadership team which is now much more diverse, you've got very different perspectives, which is I think a healthy thing to do.
Gordon's a good point. Gordon's the managing director of Kelvotech, and he's very talented. But when I used to run Kelvotech, I realised, if I be honest, Jamie, that to take the business to the next level, it needed somebody different to me, because the organisation was changing slightly. It needed a more software focused, a better software background. So if somebody was looking at it, they would have thought, they were natural successors to me, I suppose, and people that I could have gone out in the industry immediately and picked up. But Gordon was somebody that I really actively pursued, because he had a vast experience in a slightly different area that I knew would help me digitize the service that the customers needed. So it was that, first of all, be very clear on what you're looking for, and be absolutely single-minded about if you identify somebody, be really, it took me a lot of several conversations to persuade Gordon to join us.
Very good. Look, I thought we'd dispense with the sporting chat, but apparently not. Mark Irwin from Admore Advertising says that you, Peter, were a fantastic hockey player in your younger years. But then he develops this theme because he wants to know what lessons that you took from high-level team sport and how you applied it to building the culture at Camlin Group. So we're back with hockey.
Well, that's very, very nice of Mark. Now, let's be clear, Mark was a better player than I was. He definitely was. Mark's a seasoned international. And
does everyone in Northern Ireland play hockey?
Mark broke my heart on many occasions playing for Inst, whenever scoring last-minute goals. I think it is a very good point, actually. And
that you were a great player, or that you...
No, well, I don't know about that, but I think international are playing sport at a pretty competitive level. What it does, a bit like, you learn to lose. And, people talk about winning.
It doesn't sound like a good lesson.
No. But actually, I played for Cookstown, so we learned to lose quite a bit, especially against Inst. But when you learn to lose, you learn to analyse why, and you get creative, and it's all about creative. And the winning is important, but in business, I believe very strongly it's the getting up that makes you successful. And people talk about successes and the victories and the numbers and the growth, and we talk about the growth of Camlin. But actually, I believe the scars and the losing and it's the understanding of why you lost. That is probably something, and then the reliance on your teammates. It's the reliance on realizing that you can't do everything yourself.
Builds that resilience, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think that resilience and that sort of ability to realize, you need other people to be effective, and certainly, I do take great pride in having played sports, played hockey and so forth, and loved it a lot. But business is more serious, because you have people's livelihoods, you have more, families to take care of, and there's a measure at the end of it, which is the scorecard, which is the money. But a bit like sport as well. And what I would say is, we've got to enjoy the journey too. It's not just about the result, it's about the playing as well. And in Camlin, I often talk to the leadership team about this. It's not just about the numbers we produced, and it's not just about it's how we go about our business, it's how we conduct our business with our partners. It's about making sure we, explore. When we lose together. When we win together. But it's making sure we as a team are sort of enjoying the experience and it's not just the winning or losing.
Yeah, I often wonder that, you see some people who've got such natural talent and ability and they hit the ground running, but then because they immediately attract, praise because of these innate abilities, they don't necessarily always see the need to improve because they've been told from the word go, you're very good, you're a real credit to the team, to the company, that there isn't the same, the expectation isn't landed upon them that they have to improve, and so they don't necessarily feel that. Some people do, but I wonder, do you have a thought about that, Emily?
Yeah, well, I think though, the rules of the game of hockey pretty much stay the same, but the rules of the game of business does change, and certainly industries change. So having that resilience or that ability to kind of look and go, this actually isn't working anymore, and what got us here isn't going to necessarily get us there.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably what we've been talking a lot about today, really.
Just on that point, actually, we're in that regard, actually, which is one of the points. What we've seen is because we deal with, our competitors are GE, Siemens, ABB, some of the biggest companies in the world. And we're schooled, and certainly my family, and schooled about dealing internationally against these big businesses day in and day out. You kind of get used to the fact that you're in these huge organisations. But that's what I was mentioning about the people of Northern Ireland. They're made for business. But what we need to do is make sure that they realise it's the scale. You can be good in Northern Ireland, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can be good internationally. And that's what
Yeah, we have a question here, and it's about the importance of a focused R&D strategy to the company. Now, obviously, it's really important, but everybody's going to say R&D is important.
Yeah.
But I mean, just how critically significant is it for Camlin?
Yeah. Well, this is something that is really important for us, and I mean, right at the very centre of our business, but also at the centre of the transformation. We, as we move onto this bigger pitch, like I was mentioning earlier, Jamie, the R&D side of our business we've got to invest to move to offer these extra levels of service, these layers of value that we're talking about offering to our partners. That requires really significant levels of investment in AI and machine learning, in software. And I think it's very easy. The products that we used to make, we're making boxes and so forth, the gestation period for development was reasonably short. Now they're quite long and very, very sizable. So if you're not careful and you're not focused and you don't know where you're spending your money, it's very easy to get into hot water. So innovation for us is, misspent innovation in the wrong direction is very damaging. So we have to have a very clear purpose of where we're going. And then once we recognize a problem, we'll test it. And then once we commit, we'll really commit to it. And that's where the £50 million investment here over the next, because we have a way forward. We know what needs done. But we also I think, which is probably the most important point, you can't do everything. It's knowing what to turn away from.
How do you decide the amount? You decide these are the things we need to do, and then you put the amount, you do whatever it takes to achieve those ends? Or I mean, how do you? I mean, you can imagine these companies up and down the land, and they're thinking, well, what sort of is it a percentage of turnover I should put in? Is it a percentage of profit? What do you reckon should be a metric for a company? Like a rule of thumb.
Well, I think you've probably got. It's a very, very good question, actually, and it depends on what sector you're in, depends on your margin, depends on your sort of levels of recurring revenue, it depends on your relationship with the bank and so forth. But ultimately, what you really need to understand, and I think this is one of the things that I would challenge most leaders of organisations, the relationship between money, profit, and then value is not understood clearly enough. Because if you're investing for in order just to grow your revenue, but you don't understand the ultimate value of the business in terms of the sectors you're playing in, the levels of recurring revenue, the embeddedness, or the how much your customers are needing you, if you like. How difficult is it for them to throw you out? If you don't understand those equations, then you know that equation of investment in R&D becomes very opaque. Whereas for us, you know, we probably spend, you know, a greater proportion on R&D than we would do given our turnover size, but that's because of the narrow focus in which we operate and the high, you know, the margins but we also understand the value that we add to our customers in terms of the value to them. If you don't understand that last piece of the chain, the investment in R&D becomes very difficult to measure. It becomes essentially an accountancy exercise on a spreadsheet.
But the R&D strategy, it has to absolutely have to be aligned with the commercial strategy. So there's no point having a sort of technical strand going off, looking at what it feels is interesting or what's technically brilliant. Without, you know, the commercial strategy must be at the driver. And you know, I think that aligns to Peter's points around understanding the value that it's going to bring.
Is there a role for government in undertaking almost what you might call, and I hate using this term, blue sky thinking, like research where there isn't an obvious end point in terms of a product to be developed or a service to be produced? Should government be doing more? I mean, you think that sometimes that success in other countries is because quite a substantial amount of money maybe goes into defence industry and it produces things, and then you think, well, that's quite useful for this and it's quite useful for that. Should there be more of that?
This is a real dinner party conversation now. We could be here all morning, or maybe in the pub later. I completely agree, because what is important is we are naturally in our society, and particularly in Northern Ireland, even more so than on the mainland, it's the fear of failure here. We're predicated here on, you know, it's we celebrate those that win. Those that fail in business or misstep or they fail, but it's the failures that it's the losing, it's the getting knocked down that make oftentimes the best businesses, the best businessmen. I'm going to be quite controversial here. Okay,
good.
In Northern Ireland, one of the most important conversations that happens is at 16 years old, when a mother and our mother or father sits and talks to their daughter or their son, and this, let's say this son or daughter is going to get potentially A stars. We are trained in this country to condition our A star student to be, you know what, son, you be a doctor or be a lawyer, because that's a safe, you earn good money, and the bank will like you. That's great. You have a nice, safe lifestyle. And that's what we're conditioned. So the best of our brains are conditioned to go in that direction. And then the other sector, which is crying out for the innovation, the stem cells, the technologists, are naturally have to take a different route. And there's a risk element to that. And that risk is not rewarded by government. It's not rewarded by society. It's not rewarded by the banks. It's not rewarded by, you know, dinner party conversations. We as a culture here need to encourage that group of people who are the A-star students plus that next layer to be encouraged to work. And I actually believe that there's things that should be done about personal income tax breaks for young people that are going into this sector, that they could say, well, you may not earn what a doctor earns in the first 5 or 6 years, but you pay no tax. Things like that can encourage people into this sector, with all of aim to allowing us to, you know, we have a block grant here in Northern Ireland that we depend on. The only way out of it is to export. We need our best brains in this sector. We don't need any more lawyers. We don't need any more doctors. I don't mean to be dismissive. We need our best brains in this in technology that helps us export. And, you know, I believe very passionately that it comes down to risk and money and reward. Failure is part of risk. Failure is part of entrepreneurialism, and it's not that those people that failed should be castigated. Sometimes they should be celebrated for the fact that they tried.
Yeah, I hesitate to go to our next question there, who's a lawyer, George from Cunningham Solicitors, and he talks about your exemplary record in your ability to achieve international growth. And do you, Peter, see that growth continuing with the products that you have under development?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question, George. I do see us growing significantly with the products we have, but like I've said, I think by having the next layer, what this is about really, Jamie, is about us evolving. I think because our customers and markets are changing, we're changing dramatically with them. So yes, I do see us growing, but not with the portfolio of products that we have. So it's a good question.
Okay.
Yeah, just to maybe add to that, I think the key word, we're probably thinking about there is products, and actually we're looking much more at sort of total propositions. So it's more about services, and the total offer that we make to customers is much, it's really important. So the box, if you like, if you want to call it that, is becoming less important to us as we evolve into providing more of an ecosystem and ongoing services, and that plays to what Peter was talking about in terms of recurring revenue as well. So the business model is changed a little bit, but that will fuel growth.
Okay. Question from Simon from Mercer Marsh. I'm going to pick out an element of it, and that is, how are you being innovative in attracting, engaging, and retaining talented employees to help meet your growth targets?
I think it's very, in our tech industry, Jamie, it's a difficult sector to stand out in, because young people nowadays, we're in some regards, some of our competitors, if you like, in terms of for staff, are not necessarily in Northern Ireland. Some of the competition in terms of AI and machine learning are Google, Apple, Amazon, and as fast as we think we're going to grow, we're never, they're on a different scale, obviously. So, what we're looking for is making sure that our young people understand where we're going, and people, given what Emily was saying as well about finding people with the right values, some people simply aren't for us. But by being clear on the direction, and by being being true to your values, I suppose, we find it's starting to have a big impact on how we attract the right type of people that stay with us for the journey. And I'm extremely proud. I couldn't be prouder of some of the people that we have, but the work that they've put in over the last few months. And I'd say I'm just another cog in the machine here, Jamie. Only yesterday they were showing me some technology products that they were launching, and I almost sit back and bewildered all going, it's incredible. And and then I remember that some of these guys are 22, 23 years old, less than half my age. It's amazing, but it's I think giving people the opportunity to express themselves, but also making sure they understand where we're going.
It's important. Look, we could continue this conversation for quite some time, but just time's against us, and I would now like to draw the discussion to a close so that everybody can get back to the day job. But thank you once again to Peter and Emily for taking the time to share with us the hugely impressive story of Camlin Group. It's a tale of exceptional change and international growth, and I'm sure, like me, you learned a lot. Thanks again to Richard and the team at Danske Bank for your ongoing support. And thank you to Power NI, the SME partner, for Learn, Grow, Excel. On behalf of the Northern Ireland Chamber, I want to offer our appreciation to you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend this virtual event. Before you log off, please complete the feedback survey, which can be found on Zoom. We always encourage our members to help us, to help others, and your opinion and feedback enables us to do just that. I hope you enjoyed the session. I certainly did. Thank you very much, and goodbye.